Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Ari and Big Mike are proud to present the greatest podcast in the world. No snowflakes allowed, and summer is coming.
I'm so relieved you got that intro right today because we got an important topic.
We do.
This is the podcast that was started by two guys on cigar night. So, what do we got today, Mike?
All right, so the topic for today that we're going to talk about is we're going to bring up a lot about Claudine Gay. She is the head, the president, and the dean of Harvard University. We're going to talk a lot about what she's done in the recent past, which we all know. She went up before Congress and refused to admit that, she's inciting genocide and that she's not protecting Jewish students.
It's not that she's inciting genocide. When she was asked by Congresswoman Stefanik whether calls for genocide of the Jews would violate Harvard's rules, she said it depends on the context, just like all the other university presidents that testified with her.
Right, and University of Penn, they're
MIT. Mm-hmm.
And hold on, we're up there. The lady from the University of Penn, she was forced to retire. I don't remember what happened with the MIT one, but the Harvard University just came out and said, no, we're going to back Claudine Gay. Even though this woman has essentially cost us about $1 billion in donations, even though she's plagiarized, even though she's lied and cheated her way to the top, you know what? We're going to back her. Why? Because she's like the liberal Democrats, like the left of the left, like their dream child. So she's like, they play this onto this victim role, and it's like as long as she plays the victimization, she's got it. Now, this is a woman who grew up with a certain amount of affluence. This is a woman who, when we talk about privilege, she had all the privileges that she constantly complains about.
When she was growing up, her father was an engineer, Claudine Gay, and she went to Phillips Exeter Academy. And I went and looked up the tuition, the current year tuition for Phillips Exeter Academy. $50,000 a year. This woman, whether her parents paid full ride or whatever, this woman grew up with a silver spoon in her mouth. And from there, she went on to Stanford University, and she has had the golden royal road to success in academia ever since she was a child. In woke thinking, simply being black is almost treated as a handicap, and that is... I consider that to be among the most disgusting things that the woke believe.
But within the woke movement, like if you're a woman or if you're black, God forbid you're a black. If you're a black woman, you have your get out of race card, get out of jail free card. It's always about like, I'm a black woman. Nobody's more oppressed than me, so I can say and do whatever I want.
Well, even still, Claudine Gay is an extremely smooth operator. If you think about it,
I've heard her talk. She can sell ice to Eskimos.
Yeah, if what she said in front of Congress about it depends on the context for calls for genocide against the Jews to be against Harvard's rules. You have to remember that Harvard got $19.7 million from Qatar and from Saudi Arabia, so that if those countries' nationals, and by the way, nationals from those countries pay full ride. They pay full tuition at Harvard, generally speaking. So Harvard is getting a lot of money from these governments, and of course they don't want their students to be kicked out for calling for genocide against the Jews.
So now we're going to bring up our protagonist, right, in this situation. We're going to talk about a man named Roland Fryer. He's a tenured professor at Harvard University. Now, this is a man who grew up with everything going up against the guy. His mama left when he was a baby. His alcoholic, drug addict dad took care of him. If you can say that, the kid learned more about how to live a life of crime than actually got an education as a child, to the point that his grandmother had to step in and be like, yo, this is not okay. Let's get you working. Because you're a smart boy, let's do you right. Now, this boy did right, and then what happened? He grew up into a man who understood that he needed to question everything, because the world that as he knew it, he didn't necessarily agree with or have it make sense to him. And so when he went to college, he got to college on a basketball scholarship. He goes to college and he walks into an economics classroom. First time he ever studied economics in his life, right? He was so intrigued by it that he's like, by the way, just so you know, he was so intrigued by that one class. His entire career is based on him being this economist because he fell in love with being an economist. And he started looking and he started understanding and he started looking at education. And he helped fund and helped start, programs that raised up minority youth all over, right? They started off in Harlem, and then the program expanded. Then you go even further into it, and you start looking at more of what this guy does. And this guy, Roland Fryer, wants to be angry at the cops for all the violent shootings against black folk. He wants to be angry, and because why? The whole country's angry. It's like, look at this, look at the racism, blah, 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 blah. So what does he do? He starts studying it. He goes to 18 different police departments, looking at millions of points of data, right? And as he goes through it, what does he find? He finds that when it comes to lethal force, if you're white, you have a better chance of getting shot than if you're black. However, when it comes to lower level crimes, you saw how the cops had higher rates against blacks versus the whites.
In an interview with the people from Freakonomics, Fryer's economics professor was Stephen Leavitt from the Freakonomics guy, the economist.
Nice Jewish boy.
And he, in an interview with Stephen Dubner of Freakonomics, he had talked about how he went on ride-alongs. I think it was the Camden Police Department. And he said he never liked the police. They harassed him a lot when he was growing up. And he had said how after a few hours of riding along, he would point out, look, that guy's going to be dangerous, that guy's dangerous. And it's like, no, come on, it's not illegal to be dribbling a basketball down the street. He literally said that during the interview with the Freakonomics guy. So he didn't like it that actually riding with the police changed his view of how things are. He says he still doesn't like the police. When he was driving just the other day, he said, from the perspective of that podcast, he was driving a few days earlier, and the police came by with their lights flashing, and he got angry and upset until they went for somebody else. So this is not a guy who's saying what he's saying because he loves the police. He's saying what he's saying because that is where the data goes.
Right.
There are a lot of people who don't want to hear that.
No, but see, that's the thing, though. We're talking about this is where the data goes, but what does it do? It spoils all your lefty, liberal, like, bullshit woke stuff. That's saying the world isn't what you think it is. Like, I still don't understand. I really don't. And there's a lot of things that I have questions on. First off, if we know that Claudine Gay has cost Harvard $1 billion, why does she still have her job? They didn't necessarily need to take the money from the oil-rich countries in the Middle East, but they chose to. Why? Because she screwed them out of money, but they keep her there. Let's go. I mean, that's a little oversimplification, but let's go further on. Now, this is a woman who led the charge against Mr. Fryer. Mr. Fryer decided, Professor Fryer, he's earned that title. Let's respect him. Professor Fryer, became a tenured professor at Harvard University. For a man who grew up in the sticks of Florida, who didn't really have much about anything, it's like, this is really impressive. I don't care about color. He's just impressive as a human being.
Well, in the interview with Freakonomics guy.
Well, hold on.
One second. The interview with this Freakonomics guy. He said he was walking around the parking lot at Harvard University at night with Stephen Dubner, and he gets very, very angry that he sees another car that was out there in the middle of the night, and he says, "That means somebody's out working me." As it turns out, the car that was there in the middle of the night was, the guy was on vacation and just left his car there. And he was so upset that somebody possibly could be out working him. So to
Well,
say the guy has worked hard is definitely an understatement.
he's advancing truth. He's saying, I don't care what politics it plays, it advances truth. He's done studies on, like, your grades versus social skills, because a lot of people in the black community feel that if you do great in school, then, you're an Uncle Tom or something like that. And he was like, no, that's not actually
Acting
true.
white, I think it is.
Yeah, acting white, He's like, you're this or that one, and he's like, no, that's not true at all, actually. And so many fallacies that we think are true, he disproved. Now, the big issue that we have here, the huge issue is we have here. So he does this whole study about cops in America, 18 police, huge police precincts around the country, millions of points of data, and he comes up to this. Now, they didn't like that he did this. So now the two biggest people on the on the board, because they had issues with this to knock him down, were Claudine Gay and shoot, I just lost his name. Bobo. What was his full name?
I don't remember. I'll get it for you.
Yeah, so it's something Bobo, right? But basically these are two people who Bobo grew up just like Claudine Gay. His father was a physician. He grew up in the lap of luxury with a silver spoon up his mouth. He had all the advantages, yada yada yada. But his career was based on saying how, like, the white man's beating down the black man, and everything.
Lawrence Bobo.
Lawrence Bobo. That's his whole career. That's his name, and his whole career is based on that. It's just like, he's ridiculous. So him and Claudine Gay are the two people who are most against Fryer. So when this came out, all of a sudden a trumped up charge on his assistant came out where he said, hey, I was sexually harassed by you, right? 32 of the 38, they were able to knock out like that, like, this is fabricated, this is bullshit, and whatever. The other 6 were not sexual harassment. They were more of, like, he brought a flirtatious tone into a conversation that was supposed to be professional. And mind you, she did the same thing to him as well. That's what they were saying. That's really his one thing. But because of that, Claudine Gay asked the board to suspend him and to take away his tenure. Now,
And what was the recommendation of the board? I mean, didn't the board recommend that he go to workplace sensitivity class?
Yeah, workplace sensitivity. That was their thing. That was the investigators who said that. The investigators said that he should go through some workplace sensitivity. The Claudine Gay pushed for him to lose his tenure, which hadn't happened in Harvard over 100 years, so the board wasn't so inclined with it. But in the end, she wound up getting him suspended for 2 years.
Plus?
You want to say the plus, you say the plus.
Plus, he had a research facility which was used to conduct the research he was doing. And of course, this was very subversive research. He was the one that showed that, quote unquote, acting white as an inhibition to black students doing their very, very best in school is really a thing. He is the one that showed that cops aren't really hunting down black people. It's a complicated issue, but the narrative that the woke are giving us is just not true. He has a way of doing DEI, of increasing representation, black representation, minority representation, that kind of thing, in corporations by using math instead of guesswork, instead of having outside people arbitrarily looking in and making accusations. He has ways of doing this that would upset the rice bowl of the people who
have you actually looked at his work? Have you actually looked at any stuff? I Googled some of his stuff, and I will tell you, he's got formulas on how to look at things socially, how to look at, like, things that you would be like, it just feels right. He's like, no, I have a formula that shows you that it's actually working or that it's not working. I have algorithms that prove the points in a scientific way instead of just being like, because he was saying, when he was working with the kids in Harlem, right, and trying to improve their education, which he was very successful at because he understood the way certain things worked. his common thing is like, he'd ask people, how do you think the program's working? Well, it's working pretty good. Well, how do you know? It just feels right. He's like, no, I don't need it just feels right. I need quantifiable evidence.
Yeah, I know it in my heart. He called it the cardiac test for the success of a program.
Right, and guess what happened? He was like, no, I'm going to show you why it's successful or why it's not. And you know what? What the things he did need to be done all over America. As a country, every year we get worse and worse in education. We're like somewhere in the 30s right now based on the level of education. Bobo and Gay, both of their positions are based on saying that the black man is beat down and they are victims and they are nothing anymore, and that it's all because of the white man and blah, 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 blah. And there's no acceptance of any responsibility on their parts of like, what can I do to get it better? They both of them grew up in this lap of luxury, so they never really had a struggle for shit, right? The guy who actually had to struggle, the guy who actually had to pick himself up by the bootstraps and do stuff that was unheard of prior to that and made it to like Harvard.
And didn't plagiarize.
Exactly, and didn't plagiarize, and actually blows everybody's mind. He's considered like one of the smartest people alive. And that wasn't a thing that came natural to him. That was developed because he worked so hard, right? This wasn't a guy who's like, oh my God, he was given a gift like he's Einstein or some shit. No, this is a guy who was like hard work and determination will overcome, right? And he did it. And he got to the pinnacle only to be knocked down by people who said, I don't care that you're telling the truth. We want to keep our lies, because that's how we keep our jobs, and we'll do it at your expense or anybody else's expense. We don't care how many people we have to fire. I'm safe.
I don't know if Claudine Gay is a Marxist or not, and I don't really care. What I can say is this. Her thinking shares all of the worst characteristics of Marxism. Let me show you how. Karl Marx himself was never on the floor of a factory. He'd never really spoken too much with members of the working class. And likewise, Claudine Gay doesn't seem, has finally met a black guy from the inner city, and she doesn't want any part of him. Just like Karl Marx didn't want to hear from the working class. And what's more is that Marx did not trust incremental improvements, right? For example, the labor union movement, where you would go for better working hours, better conditions, better pay, that kind of thing. Karl Marx didn't want any part of that either. Why? Because the working class have to become a revolutionary force. And if their lives get better, they're going to stop being revolutionary. So with Mr. Fryer, what he has done is he's shown, here's how we can improve education. Here's how we can improve in policing. Here is how we can improve representation on corporate boards. Small, little improvements here and there and everywhere else. And what happens is when people's lives get better, they stop becoming a revolutionary force. And the success of intellectuals and the DEI woke movement depend on having an army of people who are angry, whose lives are bad, whose lives are completely disorganized and in chaos. Why? Because they could become a revolutionary force. And ultimately, if you read the writings of the people who are in the woke, you will find out that they believe that America is completely illegitimate. It has to be remade from root to branch, and the people who are going to lead us to the better future are them. They are the ones who are going to bring us to a better tomorrow.
Oh, they're full of shit.
Of course they're full of shit.
Listen, hold on. There's a YouTube personality by the name of Mr. Beast, right? I don't know if you're familiar with the guy.
Of course, yeah.
You know, the guy's only got, like, in all his different channels, over 600 million, like, subscribers. So we'll not go there. So recently, over the past year, this man has donated time, energy, money, effort into helping deaf people hear and helping blind people see, bringing fresh water to countries in Africa, bringing education to countries in Africa. Like, this guy's done a whole bunch of philanthropic work, right? And you would think that people would be like, oh, thank you, Mr. Beast. Thank you for helping us where the governments have failed. Thank you for helping us where other organizations have failed. Thank you for doing the things that, that you're showing that one person can do to help other people in the world. All right? You think instead of saying that's what they would say to him. No, instead, the woke movement has beat him down. It's like, oh, look, here's a white man coming to save black folk again. Like, no. Like, what is wrong with you? He's like, oh, he's making money off. No, he's not. Every dime that he has already pledged, every dime that he makes for any of his philanthropic videos, goes into the philanthropy that the video's on, right? Like, but nothing he does. You're like, why? Because there's this woke movement that has destroyed guys like Fryer, that is going after guys like Mr. Beast. Over and over and over again, you're seeing this woke left side being led by this woman, Claudine Gay. Like, she's one of the leaders of this woke left movement. And when she trashes somebody who's all about honesty and purity, even when it goes against what he feels inside, like, that's disgusting. She should have been fired and stripped of everything that she should have got, what she's gotten. But instead, the board says, no, we're going to keep you. Guns and bullshit.
Okay. Roland Fryer, his stated goal is to make black America happier and healthier and wealthier. And he does that by confronting the world with truth that people don't want to hear. He was told when he had that study, the one about police violence, and he showed in part of a study that non-fatal violence is disproportionately targeted against black victims, and fatal violence is disproportionately targeted against non-black victims. He had that study. And when he was about to publish it, his colleagues basically told him, this part about the non-fatal violence being not disproportionately against black people, you can't publish this. You're going to lose your job. And he published it anyway. And the thing is,
he was about truth.
Exactly. But bravery is contagious. There's a very, very big, there's very much pressure in academia to censor oneself, to self-censor. If you find truths that people don't want to hear, just shut the hell up.
No magical being is coming down and raising us up. God's not going to come on high and be like, all the black folk, you just got an extra $100,000. No, God's not coming down to do that. But what it is that God gave you the tools. We all have the tools to improve ourselves, to improve where we're going, what we're doing, and so on and so forth. Now, Roland Fryer was a man who was trying to lead a cause. This is what you need to look at. You guys need to see this information, because this information is going to change everything. But instead of publicizing, instead of being out there, instead of being like, hey, guys, let's talk about this, they shut him down, threw him into a coffin, locked the key, and buried his ass.
So bravery is contagious, as I was saying, and the punishments they put on him, he was recommended by the board to get sensitivity training. And instead, they took away his research institute. They said he was not allowed to supervise students, and they suspended him for 2 years. Now, if you think about it, the left is extremely good at using systems and using institutions to accomplish their goals. And if he's not allowed to supervise students, that means he's not allowed to make more little Roland Fryers who are going to go out and help improve the world by making these small little changes that can actually help to better people. And by eliminating his research institute, he can't ask those questions himself. He can't look for the truth. And last of all, he was made an example of. So if anybody else is going to try to be brave, they're going to say, look what happens to brave people.
Yeah,
if you are brave, this is going to happen to you too. Do you still want to be brave?
All right, bro. Thank you all for listening. Y'all have like a good morning, good afternoon, good night. And make sure, if you're still listening, to subscribe and like. All right? Y'all have a great...
Julian Guerre seems like an ordinary middle school teacher. Teaching at Howard Zinn Junior High School isn't Mr. Guerre's real career. His true calling is that of a revolutionary. His comrades in arms have found a recruit that they must have, Mr. Guiller's former student, Jonas Perez. Jonas isn't just a kid with potential. He's a trained fighter. The stakes are high. The agenda is clear. Recruit Jonas to the gang, and Mr. Guiller will get a promotion to the job he's been waiting for, teaching at Paulo Ferrer Elementary School, where recruiters like him make the big money. What does his gang of revolutionaries have planned? How did a thug like Julien Guiller even become a middle school teacher? As a classroom transforms into a battleground for the minds of our children, the stakes could not be higher. Find out what happens in the novel series Kingmaker. The first volume, Consent, is available on audiobook for free on my channel. Subscribe for more.